When we talk about modern state-backed information or influence campaigns on social media, we still rely on the categories that were established 75 years ago to talk about state-backed propaganda efforts. And those categories define different points in sort of a sliding scale between the overt and the covert. So the terms we use are white, black, and gray propaganda or disinformation accounts or websites. The difference between those three categories is the white propaganda comes from a source that can be clearly identified. So in the Russia context, this would be a YouTube channel associated with RT, Sputnik's websites, or a Twitter account connected to a diplomat, an embassy, or a government official. The content may be false, it may be misleading, it may be accurate, but you know the true source of the information. On the opposite end of the scale are the black propaganda accounts. So these are accounts that not only obfuscate the true source, but they present themselves as being an average opinion within a targeted audience or a targeted population, or just present themselves as being sort of an average citizen. But there's an effort to not only conceal the fact that there is a state connection, but to present themselves as being something that they are not. So the classic example of this was during the 2016 US presidential election, and even before that, looking at the Internet Research Agency, which set up over 3,000 accounts purporting to be real Americans. So those were, African-American activists, Second Amendment activists, all of which were presenting views that were meant to further divide Americans in a way that was obviously more damaging because it seemed to be coming from what appeared to be, if you looked at their profile, to be from real Americans. So it was completely hidden and removed from having any state connection. In between those two, you have the gray propaganda accounts or the gray websites. In the classic sense, what typically we referred to when you're talking about gray propaganda would have been like a carve-out newspaper in a developing country that was financed by a foreign intelligence service. So, one of the classic examples, if you look back at the HIV/AIDS disinformation campaign run by the Soviets, was the fact that first appeared in a kind of far-flung Indian newspaper called the Patriot Post that was, in fact, funded by Soviet intelligence. So we still see evidence of that to some degree. We'll see websites and blogs that the financing is not clear. There are connections, sometimes tenuous connections, that appear to point back to Moscow or Beijing or Tehran, but they're difficult to establish. But that also kind of now includes this cocktail of different personas and characters on social media. And some of those may in fact be real Americans, some we know to be real Americans, but they're the ones who often are the guest experts on RT. They're writing op-eds and opinion pieces. So we see kind of this two-way flow of information from the white to the gray and back the other way again. And it's important, if you're kind of studying how a modern influence or information campaign works, to understand the interplay between those three different areas, because they all are interconnected in many ways. So one of the research projects that we just recently completed was looking, for example, at how Chinese officials on Twitter have their messaging boosted quite often by these sort of pro-CCP accounts that don't appear to be authentic people. Now, these accounts quite often were not presenting themselves necessarily as Americans or Europeans, but they were presenting themselves as being a genuine person who is expressing their genuine opinion about a geopolitical topic. So what that's able to do is create this sort of false illusion of popularity or support for Chinese positions. So if you have a key spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who every time he tweets, he's getting 1,000 more likes than he would have because of this network of black disinformation accounts, that creates not only this sort of illusion that this position is more popular, but it also can game kind of the back end and the algorithms that present information to average viewers. So again, to kind of break down the three different areas, if you're looking at white propaganda accounts, these are accounts where we know the source. Black propaganda accounts, we not only do not know the source, they are intentionally presenting themselves as something they're not. And then the gray areas, again, a bit more complicated, where the source is sometimes not clear. Sometimes you may even know who the person is, but it's unclear if they're being financed in some way by a state actor. But we do know that those actors are often retweeted or amplified by the white and by the overt accounts. So that's just kind of a way of thinking to further understand that you can't look at any of these things in isolation. Otherwise, you don't really kind of fully understand the complexity of how modern information operations work on social media.